Welcome to the Billionaire Mindset, your 30-day journey to thinking like a billionaire. Now you can just watch this video, or if you want to sign up for the entire series for free and get the bonus PDF companion calendar, check the link in the description below. Today is bonus day 2, and we're going to learn from the 6th richest person on the planet at the time of this recording with a net worth of $107.4 billion, Mr. Warren Buffett.
I was wondering how you define success personally.
Well, I can certainly define happiness because that's what I am. I mean, and if that, I mean, I get to do what I like to do every single day of the year, and I get to do it with people I like. And I don't have to associate with anybody. Causes my stomach to churn. The only thing in my job I don't like, and this only happens about every 3 or 4 years, occasionally I have to fire somebody, and I don't like. That's the only thing. Other than I tap dance to work, and I get down there, and I think I'm supposed to lie on my back and paint the ceiling, or something like Michelangelo. I mean, that's the way I feel, and it doesn't diminish. It's tremendous fun. So, if they say that success is getting what you want, and happiness is wanting what you get. Well, I don't know which one applies in this case, but I do know that I wouldn't be doing anything else. I mean, I do advise you, when you go out to work, go to work for an organization that you admire, people you admire, because it'll turn you on, and you ought to be happy where you are working. And I always worry about people who say, I'm going to do this for 10 years. I really don't like it very well, and then I'll do 10 more years of this. I mean, that's a little like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, not a very good idea. So get right.
You would recommend that.
Get right into what you enjoy, and you'll be successful at it. You really will. I mean, you won't be able to miss. And that's. I don't regard what I do as the most important thing in the world at all, but it's right for me. I mean, I happen to be wired in a certain way that what I do works in this. If I had to do what Bill does, I mean, it lasts about 10 minutes, and that's true of a lot of things. But luckily, I kind of stumbled into the thing that I do best, and that it's worked out well.
Warren is probably the most rational person I've ever met. Charlie Munger would be a close rival. And Charlie became a man that Warren depended on heavily. And I think his first experiences in the discarded cigar butt era convinced him that it was not exactly where he wanted to be.
He'd made so much money for so long doing what he'd been taught by Ben Graham, which is to buy these very cheap stocks. And if they were cheap enough, he didn't care it was a lousy company and a lousy management. He knew he was going to make money anyway just because of the cheapness.
Charlie Munger has had a big impact on me in moving me toward looking for wonderful companies at fair prices rather than fair companies at wonderful prices. And that was enormously important because it enabled Berkshire to scale up in a way that would have been impossible to do otherwise. Yep.
What are the key indicators you look for within companies before making an investment?
Well, I look for something that does give them a moat around it. We have a company called See's Candy out on the West Coast. See's Candy is boxed chocolates. If you give a box of See's chocolates to your girlfriend on the first date and she kisses you, we own you. I mean, we can raise the price tomorrow and you'll buy the same box. You're not going to fool around with success. So the key there is the response. You do not want to go home on Valentine's Day and say to your wife or your sweetheart, preferably they're the same person, you don't say, "Here, honey, I took the low bid." It doesn't work. Price is, to a degree, is immaterial. If you've got an economic castle, people are going to come and want to take that castle away from you. And you better have a strong moat. You better have a knight in the castle that knows what he's doing.
You're not buying an asset. You're buying a name. You're buying a brand. You're buying a real franchise here. And Charlie was more responsible for that than anybody.
We were mental partners right from the moment we met.
I want to know, going back 50 years, what it was like when you first met Warren.
Well, I thought he was a prodigy. And I got a lot of criticism. My wife said, "Why are you paying such enormous respect to that young man with a crew cut who won't eat vegetables?"
He's ungodly smart. He's got a much broader intellect than I do. And he's magnificent at being able to condense important ideas into just a very few words.
If you're not interested in the economic scene right now, you're mentally dead.
Charlie has no tact.
All right, let's talk a little bit about bankers. Charlie on Friday compared them to heroin addicts.
Yeah, well, that's colorful Charlie, but I would not have chosen that.
I once wrote of him that when they handed out humility, he didn't get his fair share.
The ideal way to run a headquarters is to have one man, preferably over 80, sitting in an office by himself. Anything else is pure frippery.
He's always honest in what he tells me, so I listen to him.
We never had an argument. We just kind of roll with it easily. Suppose Warren doesn't want to do something that I would have done. And suppose that happens 4 times over 40 years or something. What the hell difference does it make to me? Net, the record is working out fine. Both of us know that we've done better by having ethics. Warren's not interested in making money by cheating people.
Warren's opinions of Wall Street investment bankers would not endear him to their mothers. He feels that they're, for the most part, not out for their clients. They're out for their own business interests.
In the late 1960s, there were just a flood of accounting shenanigans and mergers built upon false accounting and misleading people. It was a time when a lot of charlatans were prevailing in Wall Street and were being applauded by Wall Street. And I understood what the game was about, but I didn't want to play in it. So I closed down the partnership at the end of 1969, and I took on the title of chairman for Berkshire Hathaway.
You haven't bought the stock. You're an admirer of Jeff Bezos. A listing of the richest people in America came out. He's number 1. I think your friend Bill Gates is number 2. You're number 3. So you can see what he's done in myriad ways.
Yeah.
And of course, the question is, how come you haven't bought Amazon? Is there still time to buy? Would you still buy it?
Oh, I always admired Jeff. I mean, I met him 20 years ago or so, and I thought he was something special, but I didn't realize you could go from books to what's happened there. No, I mean, he had a vision and executed in an incredible way, something that it would not have, but there's a lot of games I miss. I would have missed, I would have missed Microsoft even if I gotten to know Bill earlier or something. Those just aren't my games. I don't worry about the things that I miss that are outside my circle of competence of evaluating. I have missed things that were within my circle, and that's a terrible mistake. Those are my biggest mistakes. You haven't seen them. But it's not a mistake because I miss Netscape or something like that at all. I would say that maybe 5% of the companies or 10% of the companies at most are within an area of my circle of competence. There's something I should be able to understand.
I would like to tell you of 2 women that each sold a business to Berkshire Hathaway, to me actually, for many, many, many millions of dollars. Both of them started with $2,500. By a coincidence, it was the exact same amount. It was everything they had in the world. And one of them was a woman who landed in Seattle in 1917, couldn't speak a word of English, had a tag around her neck. The tag said, Fort Dodge, Iowa. The Red Cross got her to Fort Dodge, where she was reunited with her husband who had come to the country a couple of years earlier. And she lived in Fort Dodge for 2 years, and as she put it, she felt like a dummy. She couldn't pick up the language. She couldn't learn a word. And so she and her husband decided to move to Omaha. So they came to Omaha in 1919, and there she found a small colony of Russian Jews, so she started feeling more at home. And then as her oldest daughter went to school, she would come home, this daughter, Frances, and she would teach her mother the words she'd learned in school that day. And this woman, Rose Bumpkin, spent 20 years saving money, bringing first her siblings over, her mother and father, $50 at a time. She sold used clothing to do it. She had 4 children during this period. And by 1937, after 20 years, she'd saved $2,500. She went to Chicago and she bought what she could of furniture. Her dream had always been to open a furniture store. And this woman who had never gone to school one day in her life, with $2,500, but with the same spirit that the people in this room had about having a dream and working to accomplish that dream, she built a business which she sold to me in 1983 for $60 million approximately, and which did $1.5 billion worth of business last year. The 4th generation is working in that business. This woman, Rose Bumpkin, she worked for me until she was 103. And then she retired and she died the next year, which is a lesson to all of Berkshire's managers that premature retirement, you can't tell what's going to happen. But Mrs. B, with her $2,500, one further fact about her, she could not read or write. And she went into a furniture business, and she didn't bring anything in unique in furniture, but she brought a determination to succeed. She knew she could outwork anyone else. She knew that she cared about her customers. She worked at very low gross margins, but she built this incredible business. Somebody once said that the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. I had been terrified of public speaking. I couldn't do it. I'd throw up. And I knew if I didn't cure it then, I'd never cure it. And so I saw an ad in the paper for the Dale Carnegie course, which worked on developing your ability to speak in public. And I went down there.
Be sincere. A good smile has the same effect as a puppy's tail. When a puppy wags.
They made us do all these crazy things to get out of ourselves, and so we stood on tables and did all kinds of things. If I hadn't have done that, my whole life would have been different. So in my office, you will not see the degree I got from the University of Nebraska. You'll not see the master's degree I got from Columbia University, but you'll see the little award certificate I got from the Dale Carnegie course.
How do I value the business that Berkshire acquires? Well, the first thing I have to decide when somebody calls me is valuing this business within my circle of competence. I don't know how to value Microsoft. I don't know how to value Oracle. I mean, if Larry Ellison calls me or Bill Gates calls me, and they don't. But if any of those, I don't know, or biotech or anything, I wouldn't know how to value it. I just, I'd wish them well and tell them, I think it's worth twice as much as they think it is, but I'm just not in the mood to buy today. I don't know. So it has to be within my circle of competence. My circle of competence, businesses I can understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand how to use a computer or not use a computer in terms of a computer company. I mean understand what the economic characteristics of the business are and what the company's really going to look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years. Bill Gates will tell you that if he were investing, he would buy Berkshire rather than Microsoft because it's so much easier to understand what our businesses are going to look like, whereas he's in a business where you're going to really have to be doing things differently over time. So I know that Wrigley's is going to be the #1 chewing gum in the country. I know Snickers is going to be the #1 candy bar in the country 10 years from now. It's been the #1 candy bar for 40 years. You don't have to be very bright to understand that when people lay out 50 cents for something that they stick in their mouth, that they're not about to experiment. I mean, it's so we try to look at businesses we can understand.
I have an old-fashioned belief that I should expect to make money in things that I understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand, what the product does or anything like that. I mean understand what the economics of the business are likely to look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I know, in general, what the economics of, say, Wrigley chewing gum will look like 10 years from now. The internet isn't going to change the way people chew gum. It isn't going to change which gum they chew. If you own the chewing gum market in a big way, and you've got Double Mint and Spearmint and Juicy Fruit, those brands will be there 10 years from now. So I can't pinpoint exactly what the numbers are going to look like on Wrigley, but I'm not going to be way off if I try to look forward on something like that. That evaluating that company is within what I call my circle of competence. I understand what they do, I understand the economics of it, I understand the competitive aspects of the business. Figuring out the economic consequences. TV. I think there's, 20, 25 million sets a year sold in the United States. I don't think there's one of them made in the United States anymore. You'd say TV set manufacturer, what a wonderful business. Everybody, nobody had a TV in 1950, or thereabouts, 45 to 50. Everybody has multiple sets now. Nobody in the United States has made any real money making the sets. They're all out of business. The Magnavoxes, the RCAs, all of those companies. Radio was the equivalent of over 500 companies making radios in the 1920s. Again, I don't think there's a U.S. radio manufacturer at the present time. But Coca-Cola, what was it, 1884 at Jacobs Pharmacy or whatever, the fellow comes up with something. A lot of copiers over the years. But now you've got a company that is selling roughly 1.1 billion 8-ounce servings of its product, not all Coke, Sprite, and some others, daily throughout the world 117 years later. So understanding the economic characteristics of a business is different than predicting the fact that an industry is going to do wonderfully. And so when I look at the internet businesses, or I look at tech businesses, I say this is a marvelous thing, and I love to play around on the computer, and now I order my books from Amazon and all kinds of things, but I don't know who's going to win. And unless I know who's going to win, I'm not interested in investing. I'll just play around on the computer. And defining your circle of competence is the most important aspect of investing. It's not how large your circle is. You don't have to be an expert on everything. But knowing where the perimeter of that circle of what you know and what you don't know is, and staying inside of it, is all important. Tom Watson Sr., who started IBM, said in his book, he said, I'm no genius, he said, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. And that is the key. So if I understand a few things, and I stick in that arena, I'll do okay. And if I don't understand something, but I get all excited about it because my neighbors are talking about it, and the stocks are going up and everything, I start fooling around someplace else, eventually I'll get creamed, and I should.
I advise students, as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. Don't sleepwalk through life, and don't say it's all going to be great. I'll do this and I'll do that, and I'm just marking time till I get to be older. That, as I've told people, that's like saving up sex for your old age. It just is not it is not a good idea. Yeah.
What are you urging them to do?
I'll explain it. Just what I'm talking about. Now, you really want to be doing what you love doing, and you can't necessarily find it on your first job.
Right.
But don't give up before you find it.
Can you help us understand how to cultivate that mindset of being comfortable saying no, being comfortable delegating? This is something that we found with our members is especially difficult for young women.
It's tough.
And we'd love to just hear your take on that, and maybe any advice you have to share about that.
I met Bill Gates in 1991, and when I did it, we had a great time talking. He thought he was going to hate it, and I wasn't too keen on it either. And about 10 hours later, we were still talking. But what really got him was when I pulled out this little date book. I'm probably the only guy in the United States with one of these still.
Oh, no, I have one over there.
And I just flipped through it, and there's practically nothing in it. And Bill was really impressed by that. And you've got to keep control of your time, and you won't keep control of your time unless you can say no. You can't let other people set your agenda in life. And of course, I know I'm in a very fortunate position on that because I can. And in another way, I'm not so fortunate because more people ask me for things, and they're usually friends, and they say, well, can't you just make this one talk or attend this one graduation or whatever it may be? You just have to develop the ability to say no and do it a few times. If a woman can't say no, she's in trouble, right?
Right. And I mean, is this something that becomes easier over time, or how did you?
I don't think it gets a lot easier. No, there's a few things that really just are uncomfortable enough. The thing I dislike the most, the only thing I really dislike in connection with my job, is if I have to fire somebody. I mean, that does not get easier for me as life has gone along. And saying no is not like firing people, but it's got a little bit of the same aspect to it. It's not easy to say no, particularly to a friend. But I will have every day 3 or 4 or 5 requests to do something, and I can't do them all. But I'm not promising it gets easier. but just keep doing it. Otherwise, other people will be running your life. I got an awful lot of good advice from my dad, and he didn't lay it on me. I mean, he just, you picked it up from him, but there was never any of this, do this, do that type of thing at all. But I think he really taught me that it's more important in terms of what's on your inner scorecard than your outer scorecard. I mean, some people get in a position where they're thinking all of the time of what the world's going to think of this or that instead of what they themselves think about it. And if your inner scorecard, if you're comfortable with that, I think you're going to have a pretty happy life. And I think the people that strive too much for the outer scorecard sometimes find it's a little hollow when they get all through.
How would you define true success?
Well, I've said many times that if you get to be 65 or 70 and later, and the people that you want to have love you actually do love you, you're a success. I've never seen anybody that reaches that age. I mean, I'm not talking about somebody that's in extreme poverty or pain or something, but I've never seen anybody that, if they have a lot of people that love them, that is other than happy. And I've seen some very, very wealthy people that they give testimonial dinners to and name schools after and everything. Nobody loves them. By far the best investment you can make is in yourself. I mean, for example, communication skills. I tell the students that come that they're going to graduate schools and business, and they're learning all these complicated formulas and all that. If they just learn to communicate better, and both in writing and in person, they increase their value at least 50%. And I mean, if you can't communicate, somebody says, it's like winking at a girl in the dark. Nothing happens, basically. And you have to be able to get forth your ideas, and that's relatively easy. I did it myself with the Dale Carnegie course. Some people wish I'd taken a shorter course now in terms of my talking later on. But it's just hugely important. And if you invest in yourself, nobody can take it away from you. I mean, the second thing, which I'll get a certain criticism for not living it, but I do tell those students, that if I gave you a car and it'd be the only car you get in the rest of your life, you take care of it like you can't believe it. Any scratch, you'd fix that moment. You'd read the owner's manual. You'd keep a garage and do all these things. And you get exactly one mind and one body in this world. And you can't start taking care of it when you're 50. By that time, you'll have rusted out if you haven't done anything. So you should really make sure that you just remember that you just got one mind and body to get through life with and to do the most with it.
What about life advice?
Well, life advice is, the most important thing, aside from the things I've talked about already, is really who you associate with. You want to associate with people that are better than you are. I mean, basically, you'll go in the direction of the people that you associate with, and you want to have the right heroes. You want people, if you want to emulate somebody, you better pick very carefully who you want to emulate. And when obviously you can't pick your parents, they're going to have an enormous influence on you, but you don't get a choice on that. But you get choices as you go down the line, and who you admire, who you want to copy, and the most important for most people in terms of that decision is their spouse. It's also important in terms of a partner in business, but the partner in life is the most important one. You want to pick a spouse that's better than you are, and then he or she, and you hope they don't figure it out too fast.
70 years ago, I was in high school, almost a third as long as the country has been around. And when I was in high school, I really only had two things on my mind: girls and cars. and I wasn't doing very well with girls, so we'll talk about cars. But let's just imagine that when we finish, I'm going to let each one of you pick out the car of your choice. Sounds good, doesn't it? Pick it out, any color, you name it. It'll be tied up with a bow, and it'll be at your house tomorrow. And you say, well, what's the catch? And the catch is that it's the only car you're going to get in your lifetime. Now, what are you going to do knowing that that's the only car you're ever going to have and you love that car? You're going to take care of it like you cannot believe. Now, what I'd like to suggest is you're not going to get only one car in your lifetime, but you're going to get one body and one mind, and that's all you're going to get. And that body and mind feels terrific now, but it has to last you a lifetime.
People ask me what they should take in business school, or even if they don't go to business school, what they need to know before getting in business. And I tell them, you have to understand accounting. It's the language. I mean, it's like being in a foreign country without knowing the language if you're in business and you don't understand accounting. So you want to get as comfortable with that as you are with the English language. It's made me a lot of money because I listened to what Ray Dean had to say 53 or 4 years ago, and have been able to understand what I was seeing on pieces of paper, what that told me about businesses, and the limitations of what it told me about businesses.
If you were to do it all over again, you're in our shoes, what industry would that be in? Where would you start your own business today?
I'd do the same thing. Yeah. I mean, for one thing, I'd be a failure at anything else probably. I mean, I'm not gonna, no, I mean, I had fun when I was in my 20s, my 30s. Now I'm 86 and I'm having fun. And so I advise students as much as possible, look for the job that you would take if you didn't need a job. I mean, don't sleepwalk through life, and don't say it's all going to be great. I'll do this and I'll do that, and I'm just marking time till I get to be older. That, as I've told people, that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, it just is not it is not a good idea. Yeah.
What are you urging them to do?
I'll explain it. Just what I'm talking about. Now, you really want to be doing what you love doing, and you can't necessarily find it on your first job. Right. But don't give up before you find it. Everything you do learn is cumulative. I mean, that doesn't mean that industries stay good forever or businesses stay good forever, but learning to think about business models. What I learned at 20 is useful to me now. What I learned at 25 is useful to me now. And so it's not a field that changes dramatically in terms of the underlying principles. It's like physics. I mean, there's underlying principles. Now they're doing all kinds of things with physics they weren't doing 50 years ago. But if you know if you got the principles, if you know what makes a good business, if you know what makes a good manager, if you know what makes a good product, and you learn that in one business, there is some transference to other businesses as you go along, and you learn what things you're not going to understand. I mean, knowing what to leave out is just as important as knowing what to focus on. And I don't think I can win every game. Somebody said, how do you beat Bobby Fischer? You play him any game except chess. So I don't play Bobby Fischer chess. And there's a lot of value to learning that over time, and learning what you're good at and what you're not good at.
I was wondering, how do you decide what you invest your time and money in? Yeah, well, I like to find
businesses that have good economics. Now, what are good economics? Well, good economics are a business that has some kind of a moat around it that makes its product or its service or its location or something a little more desirable to the customer than any other sort of comparable product. You know, the number one candy bar in the last 30 or 40 years has been Snickers. People don't fool around with different candy bars. They fool around with different length dresses. They fool around, you know, with all kinds of things. But they don't fool around with candy bars because they figure, you know, they're going to go in and lay out 50 cents or whatever it is and put it in their mouth. And they're not going to, for 50 cents and putting it in your mouth, I mean, you're not going to say, I'll lay out 45 cents and put something else in my mouth. So you find that very stable. And we like businesses that we think we can figure out where they're going to be in 10 or 15 years. I don't know where the information technology businesses are going to be in 10 or 15 years. I know where Snickers bars are going to be in 10 or 15 years. They're going to be selling just about this, you know, the way they do now. I know where Wrigley's gum is going to be in 10 or 15 years. There's not going to be a lot of innovation in chewing gum. The internet's not going to cause people to quit chewing gum either. I mean, at least, Gates may think so, but I don't think so. But it's predictability regarding the sustainability of a competitive advantage, something special about a product. You don't need 150 IQ to do what I do, thank God. You know, you don't need 140, you don't need 135. You may need 115 or something like that. But you do need discipline. You have to wait until you see the fat pitch to swing at. Because investing is a no-called strike game. You know, if I were a baseball player and I only liked pitches 2 inches above my navel, you know, some guy could learn that and he could pitch me, you know, 3 or 4 inches below that, and I get called out on strikes because I never find a pitch I like. You can get called out on strikes in baseball. You have to swing at pitches that you don't even necessarily like, particularly after the count gets to 2 strikes. In business, you don't have to swing at anything. You can sit there and the paper says General Motors at 68, or it says General Electric at 115, or it says General Dynamics at 63. And if you don't like those prices, you don't have to swing. You can wait there day after day after day after day, and there are no called strikes. Now, when you swing, when you decide to buy something, then, you know, if you swing and miss, it's a strike. But it's a marvelous game to be in because there are no called strikes, and you can simply wait for that one time in a month or 6 months or a year or 2 or 3 years when you really know what you're doing, where you like the price, where you like the people running the business, and then you swing, and you only need a few swings in your lifetime. How do you turn failure into a plus? And it's true. When I was at the University of Nebraska, one day I was reading the Daily Nebraskan, and it said in room 300 or something, at 3 o'clock there will be this panel of 3 professors here at the university, and they're going to award the Nathan Gold Scholarship. I don't know whether you still have that around? And at the time, it said it would give you $500 to go to the graduate school of your choice. I don't know whether it's changed in amount, but that was it. So I read this, and I went there to this room at 3 o'clock that day, or whatever it was, and I walked in the room, and there were the professors, and I was the only student that showed up. I mean, it really got to them. I mean, they were stuck. They kept waiting and looking at their watch and hoping there'd be more candidates, but no one came in. So I won $500 by default. And those are usually my biggest triumphs when nobody else shows up. And so here I was. I had $500 to go toward it wasn't limited, any graduate school for a master's degree. So I applied to Harvard. My dad wanted me to. And I shortly heard from Harvard, and they said, go to Chicago and meet this fellow who interviews applicants from the Midwest. So I got on the train, and that's what you did in those days, and I spent about 10 hours on the Burlington going to Chicago. Then I transferred to another little interurban train to go up to this country day school where this fellow was the headmaster, and he was the big interviewer for Harvard. And I got there, and after about 10 minutes, he said, better think about something else. He come back later on. I was 19 at the time, and I looked about 12, and I acted about 8. So it was not a great combination. So he said, forget it. So I took the little interurban train back to Chicago, and I took the 10-hour train back to Omaha, and all the time I'm thinking, what do I tell my parents? It's kind of embarrassing. But it was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. Because if I'd gone to Harvard, I would have gone to a 2-year business school. I instead applied to Columbia, where I could graduate in 1 year and get a master's degree. Luckily, that by the accident of it and being in the Nebraska National Guard, which did not get called up for the Korean War, I missed going in the Korean War. I got to meet Ben Graham, which had an enormous effect on me subsequently. And I probably got my wife that way because she was going to Northwestern. And I was able to put on sort of a full court press because I got out in 1 year. And otherwise, she'd have met some other guy. I mean, I got her before the competition showed up. And so it worked out wonderfully. It couldn't have worked out better. And that's been my life, basically. I mean, things, you will get some disappointments, but the future is what counts. It'd be fun if I knew every decision I was going to make was going to be perfect. It would not be as much fun. It'd be like playing golf and knowing you're going to hit a hole-in-one on every hole. You wouldn't play golf if every time you got on a tee, you just took a swing and the ball ended up in the hole. It'd be fun for a few days. You get on TV, but the game would not be any fun. So it's failure, and I wouldn't even consider them failures, but they're mistakes or whatever you want to call them. They're part of the game, and in the end, you go on, and we've made plenty of mistakes in business. We'll make plenty more, and the Babe Ruth, and for a long time, it subsequently got eclipsed by a few fellows, but he held the record for strikeouts. So they held the record for home runs and was the highest paid baseball player until the modern era came along. So it's part of the game. If you take big swings, you're going to miss sometimes. I like to read more than most kids. I really like to read a lot. My Aunt Edie gave me a copy of the World Almanac, and that was heaven to me. And I can still tell you that the almost population was 214,006 in 1930. Some numbers just kind of stick with you. And very early, probably when I was 7 or so, I took this book out of the Benson Library called 1,000 Ways to Make $1,000. And one of the ways in this book was having penny weighing machines. And I sat and calculated how much it would cost to buy the first weighing machine and then how long it would take for the profit for that one to buy another one. And I would sit there and create these compound interest tables to figure out how long it would take me to have a weighing machine for every person in the world. First books I read on investment were actually in my dad's office. Pretty soon I read all the books in the office and read some of them more than once. A few years ago, I went to Amazon, and sure enough, they had this manual there. So while reliving my youth, other guys were going to Amazon probably and buying old Playboys or something, but I bought old Moody's manuals instead. And when I got out of school, I started selling stocks. I was 20 years old at the time and looked about 16 and acted about 12. So I was not the most impressive salesperson anybody ever met. But what I would do was I went through page by page looking for possibly undervalued stocks.
What other habits did you cultivate in your 20s and your 30s that you now see as being foundational to your success as a business person?
Well, I knew a lot about what I do when I was 20. I mean, I really read a lot, and I aspired to learn everything that I could about the subject. So intellectually, I knew a lot. I did not know a lot about human behavior. I mean, that you can't learn really out of reading books, but it's very important to understand people. And I say to the students, just imagine you could buy, or you could be given 10% of the future earnings of one person that you know among everybody you know. Now, are you going to pick the person that's the smartest? Are you going to pick the person that can dance the best or that can run the fastest or anything like that?
What's the right height?
No, anything.
Hair color?
You're going to pick the person that has the right habits, that is cheerful, generous, gives other people credit for what they do. And when you look at all of the qualities that you admire in other people, which would cause you to pick that person, say to yourself, which of those qualities can't I have myself? Because they are, you determine whether you have them. So just write them down on a piece of paper. Who is the person that you admire the most or like the best? Why do I like them? And just write down and then say, which of these can I do myself? And the truth is you can do them. And then you also, if you really want to carry it to the next extreme, you pick the person you dislike the most. And why do you dislike that person? They always, they're never fair about things, basically. They always claim more credit than they're due and everything. And write down those qualities and say, if you dislike that in some other person, why in the world would you want to have those yourself? So you just get rid of those. And it's a pretty simple thing to do. But you want to be the person that if you could pick your best friend, that you would have the same qualities. I'm 72. I'm getting Social Security now, so I should be in Florida, pushing shuffleboard around or something of the sort. But I do what I can do. Anything in the world I want to do. But what I want to do is run Berkshire Hathaway. Now, why do I want to run it that way? I get to paint my own painting. I go down there every day, and I feel like Michelangelo there, working on the Sistine Chapel or something. Nobody else may think it's a great painting, but I get to paint my own painting. I do not have people second guessing me. I do not have people saying, why don't you use a little more red paint than blue paint? Why don't you paint a seascape instead of a landscape? I get to do my own thing. It's a form of creativity. It's exactly like somebody feels it's a professional golfer or somebody feels it's a painter. They're not doing it for the money, primarily. They're doing it because they like doing something well. We've got a company, Flight Safety, that trains more pilots than anybody in the world. Flight Safety is run by an 85-year-old man, Al Yulshi. Al started the company with $10,000 in 1951. It now trains 4 or 5 times as many pilots as non-military pilots as anybody in the world. And he is there at 85, and it's a matter of public record. He's got $1 billion worth of Berkshire shares. He works 7 days a week. He loves it. And he loves it for the same reason that I love what I do. He gets to do it his way. He buys these big simulators that you train pilots in. He doesn't have to check with me as to whether to spend $15 million for a simulator. He doesn't ask me. He knows so much more about it than I do. Why in the world would he ask me? Well, I can't tell what kind of a plane I'm in, when I'm flying around. And Al is spending a couple $100 million a year on simulators, spending Berkshire Hathaway money, and he never checks with Omaha. He's never had to come to Omaha for any kind of meetings. He runs his own business, and that's what he loves in life. And I let him do it. I mean, that's my contribution to it, is really turning loose his energies. And, they were properly directed before we bought the company 7 or 8 years ago. Why should I think that, he couldn't keep running it after that? And like I say, at 85, he's still running it. And that feeling of ownership is really extraordinary, and it's so much better. I mean, it's the way I like to work, and it's the way, Susan Jock likes to work. It's the way Al Yulshi likes to work. You're lucky in life if you can find your passion. I tell the students, you may have to take a job or two. You got to eat, but never give up searching for the job that's your passion. Try to find the job that you would have if you were independently rich. That's the job I have. And when you find that job, the job that causes you to be excited every day and forget about the pay, and where you associate with people you love, doing what you love, it doesn't get any better than that. My partner Charlie is 89, and we were talking about that this weekend. I'm 82, he's 89. We do what we love every day with people we love, and they seem to like us okay. So, how can it be any better? And just cost of living does not equate to standard of living. And the standard of living is, achieving what you want to achieve, working with people that you love, and you don't need that much money. Aside, I love to ride around in a private plane. I will totally acknowledge that. Leaving that out, I basically, leaving out taxes and charity and things like that, I can easily live on $100,000 a year, and I wouldn't live better if I had 8 houses, if I had a 400-foot yacht or anything of the sort. I've been on 400-foot yachts, and I've been in a lot of fancy houses, but I'm in a house that I bought 55 years ago. It's warm in the winter, it's cool in the summer, it has everything I wanted, plus it has all kinds of good memories. My kids have good thoughts about it. I can't imagine living any better. I paid $31,500 for it. I could pay $31 million for a house, and it wouldn't do for me what this present house does.
One of the things you do in your annual report, which has become a classic, is you will discuss what went wrong, like Dexter, and what you learned, and what you learned from it.
Sure,
tough to do.
Well, it's very important to recognize mistakes. I mean, if somebody goes around and says, I never made a mistake, I mean, you quit listening to them. I mean, they're in a dream world. So facing up to it, it's a little like in terms of discussing issues. You should be able to discuss the other fellow's position just as well as you can discuss your own. So I mean, that's part of thinking well, and certainly part of making good decisions in business is recognizing the poor decisions you've made and why they were poor, and that doesn't mean you never do the same thing. I mean, because sometimes it was a freak situation, but I have made lots of mistakes. I'm going to make more mistakes, but Babe Ruth struck out a lot of times. I mean, it's the name of the game that you do it. You don't want to expect perfection in yourself. You want to strive to do your best, but it's too demanding to expect perfection in yourself, and it does some good to recognize them and not start trying to go around kidding people about them.
Is there a meaningful distinction to be drawn between making money out of investment and making money out of speculation? It's always a bet, isn't it? It's always a gamble.
No, it isn't a gamble. There is a real distinction. Basically, it's subjective, but an investment attitude, you look to the asset itself to produce the return. So if I buy a farm and I expect it to produce $80 an acre for me in terms of its revenue from corn and soybeans, and it cost me $600. I'm looking at the return from the farm itself. I'm not looking at the price of the farm every day or every week or every year. On the other hand, if I buy a stock and I hope it goes up next week, to me that's pure speculation.
Shortly after I met Bill Gates, Bill's dad asked each of us to write down on a piece of paper one word that would best describe what had helped us the most. Bill and I, without any collaboration at all, each wrote the word focus. Well, focus has always been a strong part of my personality. If I get interested in something, I get really interested. If I get interested in a new subject, I want to read about it, I want to talk about it, and I want to meet people that are involved in it.
If somebody told me 10 years ago what was going to happen the next 10 years, we could have made a lot of money in the bond market together, but there's always a reason afterwards. Tomorrow's paper will say stocks went down today because of, but they didn't write it this morning's paper that stocks are going to go down today. You have to know what you don't know, and you have to make sure that what you don't know isn't all important. I mean, if there's 4 boxes there, you want to get to what is knowable and which is favorable. And there's things that you'll miss out on because they belong in the other 3 boxes, one of which will be favorable, another one that's favorable. And the fact that you're missing out on 90% of the stuff doesn't really make any difference if the 10% you do is right.
If success is contingent on a good plan, excellent education and execution, and a driven mindset, what do you think makes businesses fall apart when all of these factors have been met? And sorry, go ahead.
Some businesses are just tough. I mean, a significant percentage, of the restaurants that open up this year are going to fail. I mean, there are a lot of tough businesses. I've always said, if you want to be regarded as a great business person, find a great business. And there's a huge difference. I mean, it does make a difference. I use this analogy when I got out of Columbia, one of my best friends was a terrific talent, and he went to work in the steel business, and he did okay, but it was the wrong business to be in. It's very important to get on the right train. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to get on a train that's going to go 90 miles an hour, right, and not one that's going to go 30 miles an hour, and you're going to try to figure out how to push it along a little faster.
Right.
So it really does make a huge difference. And there are some businesses that are inherently, there's far more opportunity in than others. So you want to give a lot of thought to what train you're getting on. And I owned a half interest when I was, 21 or 22 in a service station, a Sinclair service station with a pal of mine in the National Guard. It was a lousy business. You know, we had a guy right next to us, and he kept selling more gallons of gas than we did. He would cut our prices and everything. I mean, I don't care if, you know, if you're a combination of Steve Jobs and Larry Ellison and everyone else. You're not going to succeed if you got a guy selling gas below cost next to you. So, you know, it's important to get on the right train.
It takes three qualities, essentially, to do well, and extremely well, actually, in this country. It takes intelligence, it takes energy, and it takes integrity. And I say if you don't have integrity, you know, we don't want to hire somebody that's got intelligence and energy if they don't have integrity. We'd rather hire somebody that's dumb and lazy if they don't have integrity, because they probably will never get around to cheating us or doing something of the sort. And integrity is absolutely an option, you know. You may not be able to throw a football 60 yards, and, you know, you may not be able to run the 100 in 9.8, you know, you may not be able to sink three-pointers but you can choose where you stand on the integrity scale. You can't, you weren't born wired one way or the other. That is an absolute choice you make.
I was wondering if you have any stock tips for any of the students. You know, we're all trying to make a little living.
I didn't think they taught that at Georgetown. The best investment I ever made, well, I bought a book in 1949 by a fellow named Ben Graham called The Intelligent Investor. I don't remember what I paid. But aside from what I paid for my 2 marriage licenses, that was the best investment I ever made. It's very important to have the right framework. You need to have an approach to investing that's sound. And Graham's approach is simple, but some people adopt to it, and which I did immediately, and most people don't. But if you have the right philosophy, you will find opportunities as you go through the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And frankly, you're most likely to find them when in periods like 5 years ago when we were having the panic. I mean, stocks sell at silly prices from time to time. Most stocks at one time or another sell at very silly prices. And it doesn't take a high IQ to figure out that they're cheap, but it does take a temperament that's willing to step up and actually act. I tell people, if they're going in the investment business, if you got 160 IQ, sell 30 points to somebody else because you won't need it. I mean, I figured out very early, you don't have to be that smart in this business, which is fortunate, but you do have to have the right temperament. And you have to be able to ignore what other people are saying and simply look at the facts and decide, is this stock which is selling at X worth 2X? And occasionally you'll find things like that. And when you don't find them, you don't do anything. So that's my generalized stock tip, no names. I should mention one thing about reading. It was at the library here at Columbia, which I spent probably more time than any other student. I lived there practically. But I pulled the book out there, happened to be Who's Who in America, and it told me something about my professor, Benjamin Graham. And then I looked up and I went to the library and I said, I want to learn more about this because I learned this over here. That changed my whole life. We own Geico now because of that librarian directing me to some other book and then following through on that. It's the chance. I read about 1/5 the pace that Bill does, but I still spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading. I mean, you can learn so much. I particularly love biography, to be able to live the lives of these people that have been so extraordinary, the lessons and the discouragements they face, just everything about it. So you can't get enough of reading.
How would you advise people who aren't necessarily going into a career field in which you would make a large base salary, such as like medicine or something like that, maybe performing arts or music? How would you advise us to keep up financially with the rest of the world?
Well, it is true that a market system does not pay as well in some activities as might seem appropriate for the importance of those activities to society. Just take teaching, for example. I mean, teaching does not pay well. And what could be more important? I mean, you've got to be as interested in who the teachers of your children are as who your accountant is, or whatever, or who's winning the heavyweight title of the world, or that sort of thing. But it doesn't pay well, and it's a fundamental choice whether you're going to go into something. For many people, it'd be a fundamental choice whether you're going to go into something you love or something to try and make a lot of money. I think that generally it pays to go with what you love. I think that it's very hard to find people when they get to be my age who say that they've loved what they've done all their life and feel it was very worthwhile, but they're terribly sad they made that choice because they didn't make a lot of money. I don't think anybody's ever said that to me, that they wish they'd gone into something else where they were uncomfortable doing it or didn't enjoy it, didn't feel very productive, but made a lot of money. So I don't think you'll find that. So I would go to work. I would go to work in whatever turns you on. It may turn out that it'll be more profitable than you can think, but almost everybody here will make enough money, unless they get some terrible habits along the way, to do reasonably well. And doing reasonably well in this country really is pretty darn good. I mean, it's not necessary to have huge amounts of money in order to enjoy yourself. I enjoyed myself when I had my $10,000, and I live in the same house that I lived in when I had about that. I bought it 41 years ago. I liked the house then. I like the house now. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a reasonable job, you'll be eating at McDonald's and I'll be eating at McDonald's. So we're at a push on food. I mean, in fact, I hope it's Dairy Queen, actually, and and if you come to Dairy Queen, you'll see me. And you can order anything on the menu I can order, and we both can afford it. You'll wear the same clothes I wear. I'll pay more for my suits, but as soon as I put them on, they look cheap on me. So we'll look about the same. And we'll both live in the same kind of houses. I live in that house from 41 years ago, and it's warm in winter, and it's cool in summer, and it's comfortable. And you'll live in a house that's similar. And what difference does it make if you have 50 more rooms or guest houses or all that? It'll probably just bring you problems. I mean, you have to worry about the greenskeeper or something when you get through. So I have been in the houses of people where the houses are worth probably 200 times what my house is worth, and I would not be any happier in those houses at all. In fact, I'd be less happy. I'd just have one more thing to worry about, and dozens of people around the place, and people quitting, and people stealing from you, and all kinds of things. To hell with it. We'll drive the same kind of car. In fact, you'll probably drive a better car. I drive a car that's about 8 years old. I don't know what it's worth now, but it gets me around fine. I mean, I'm perfectly happy. We'll watch the same television. We'll work on the same computer pretty much. The only difference will be how we travel long distances. I will fly in a plane that's more comfortable than flying Southwest Airlines or something, which I've got nothing against. But that's the one real big difference. And other than that, I do what I like every day. I hope you'll do what you like every day to do. And I work with nice people. I hope you work with nice people. And there's 24 hours in the day, and those are where the hours go. So great wealth is the tiniest bit different in a real sense than having just a decent income, and to trade a decent income and something you love doing and something where you feel worthwhile doing it for huge wealth where you trade off a lot of your principles would be a terrible mistake. I was very lucky in life. If you tell me who your heroes are, I will make a pretty good prediction about what you're going to do. And I had the right heroes. I was very lucky in life, and my heroes never let me down, and started with my dad, and then I had others in business. And so I have had great teachers, some formal teachers, some that were just informal teachers by instinct or example. And if I hadn't had those, my life, I'm sure, would have been very different.
I was lucky that I got started early. I mean, it always helps if you get started early. And my dad happened to be in the investment business, so I would go down to his office on Saturdays. And so at age probably 7 or something, I started reading these books that were around the place. And so I had a 15-year jump on many people in a sense, and that helped a lot. And I was always fascinated by it. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do early, and I think that's a huge advantage too. And then you don't need a lot of brains in this business. I mean, I've always said if you got an IQ of 160, give away 30 points to somebody else because you don't need it in investments. What you do need is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently, and you have to be. When you come to a conclusion, you have to really not care what other people say, and just follow the facts and follow your reasoning, and that's tough for a lot of people. That part I think I was just lucky with. I was born that way.
In terms of emotions, it's a truism that in investing, emotions are your enemy.
Absolutely.
That when the market's good, if you feel good, don't. If you feel bad, you should probably do it.
Right.
But how did you? What was that extra thing where so many will acknowledge that, and yet we saw in the current crisis they panicked while you went into seemingly potential disasters like GE and Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. I can't really tell you the answer. I mean, I didn't learn in school or anything. It never bothered me if people disagreed with what I thought, as long as I felt I knew the facts. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I don't know a thing about. I just stay away from those. So I stay within what I call my circle of competence. You know, Tom Watson said it best. He said, I'm no genius, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. Well, I try and stay around those spots, and I just don't have a problem if somebody says, you're wrong on something. I go back and look at the facts, and I think that really is much more important, frankly, than having a few points of IQ or having an extra course or two in school or anything of the sort. You need emotional stability. If you look around you at the people you admire, they have certain qualities. I mean, you've got friends. Why do you like them? Generally, generally they have an upbeat attitude on life. Generally, they are generous people. They're humorous people. They're people that do more than their share. They're people that are thinking about something nice they can do for you. And all of those qualities attract you. And none of those are innate at birth. I mean, you can acquire those. And then there's other people that turn you off, and they have habits. They take credit for things they didn't do. They don't show up on time, whatever it may be. They're a little dishonest about things. And if you're looking at your life at a young age like you are, and you can choose what kind of a person you can be, why not be the person you admire rather than the person you can't stand? It's so simple. So just write down the qualities you like. Take your 5 best friends. Why do you like them? And just write down those qualities. And you will find there's no quality there that you can't have yourself. And similarly with the 5 people you can't stand to be around, put those things down that turn you off about those people. And if they turn you off about them, why should you possess them? It's so simple. It's not like something complicated that you think you should be learning with an advanced degree in school.
It's not as complicated as investing in the stock market.
No, but it's enormously important to have people work with you in life. Right. They're going to work with you in life if they like you. And they may occasionally, I mean, if you're in the Army or something, you may work for somebody that you don't like. But by and large, you're going to get the best out of people if they feel good about you. And it's just so easy, but you've got to develop the habits early, because you can't say I'm going to suddenly become a terribly attractive person when I'm 60. It just doesn't work that way. So pick up the right habits now. And I will guarantee you, if you actually just write down those qualities and think about it, you will find you can have every one of the attractive qualities, get rid of the ones that are negative, and your life will be different.
All of you in this room have the brains to do extremely well in life. You've all got the energy to do extremely well in life, and then the question is, how do you apply it? If you've got a 200 horsepower motor, do you get 200 horsepower out of it? Do you get your full potential, or do you get 100 horsepower or 50 horsepower? Now, there's 2 things that can hold you back in getting the full horsepower out of your engine, whatever it may be. All of you have big enough engines. And one of those is a lack of education, but that probably isn't going to happen to very many people in this room. If you did have a lack of education, if you didn't have a chance to get a decent education in life, it wouldn't make any difference what that potential was, because you'd never unlock it. But the second most important thing, and equally as important, is in terms of the habits that you develop, in terms of what you do with yourself. When we hire people, we look for three qualities. We look for integrity, we look for intelligence, and we look for energy. But if they don't have the first one, integrity, the other two will kill you. Because if you're hiring somebody without integrity, you really want them to be dumb and lazy, don't you? I mean, last thing in the world you want for them is to be smart and energetic. So smart and energetic only goes with integrity. But the nice thing about you make your own decision on that. You can't change your IQ or how far you can throw a football or how high you can jump or the color of your hair very easily. But you can elect to have integrity that matches anybody else's. And if you match that with intelligence, which you have, and energy, which you have, you will get an extraordinary result, and you'd be very foolish to sell me 10% of yourself for $50,000. On the other hand, if you don't match it with that, your potential will, in a significant part, go unused.
Over the years, I've developed a better understanding of human nature. I can learn a lot about investments out of a book, but I don't think you can learn as much about human beings. You really need some experiences, and I'm wiser in that respect than I was 40 or 50 years ago, even though I can't rattle off numbers the same way I used to be able to.
If you buy a business, if you buy a farm, do you go up and look, every couple of weeks to see how far the corn is up? And, do you worry too much about whether somebody says this is going to be a year of low prices because exports are being affected or anything like that? You buy a farm and you hold it for, I've got one farm that I bought in the 1980s and my son runs it, but I've been there once, I mean, it doesn't grow faster if I go and stare at it, I can't cheer for it, more effort or something like that. And I know there's going to be some years when prices are going to be good and some when the prices aren't going to be good. I know there's years when yields will be better than others, but I bought the farm. And if it just doesn't, I don't care about economic predictions on it or anything of the sort. I do care that over the years, it's well tended to in terms of rotating crops, and I hope yields get better, which they generally have. In fact, that farm 100 years ago would have probably produced 30 bushels, maybe 35 bushels of corn per acre, and now in a good year, it'd be 200. I mean, we've really made progress in this country. That's one reason commodity prices, if you go back a couple hundred years, they've moved so little, is because we've just gotten better and better at whether it's cotton or whether it's corn or soybeans or all kinds of things. And you and I have benefited from that.
And so Apple is kind of like a farm.
Well, it's a long-term investment. And if you own the best auto dealership in town, the best brand, and you had somebody good running it, you wouldn't drop by every day and say, how many people have come in today, or I think interest rates are going up a little, maybe it'll slow down our sales or anything. No, you buy it knowing there's 365 days a year and you're going to own it for 20 years, so that's 7,300 days. And things are going to be different from day to day and year to year. You shouldn't buy it if the day-to-day stuff is important. If you look around the world at the people that succeed and the people that other people want to work with, the natural leaders, it isn't because they have the highest IQ or they can kick a football the furthest or anything like that. They're people that you want to work with. I mean, I've got a wonderful friend named Tom Murphy. I would do anything for him. He's never going to ask me to do it, but I mean, I want to do it. I mean, I want to do it. I mean, he's done so many things for me, and he doesn't have to pay me to do it or anything of the sort. That's what you want to. You want to look for that, and you want to be that. You will move in the direction of the people that you associate with. So it's important to associate with people that are better than yourself, and actually the most important decision many of you make, not all of you, will be the spouse you choose. Right. And you want to associate with people who are the kind of person you'd like to be. You'll move in that direction, and the most important person by far in that respect is your spouse. I can't overemphasize how important that is, and you're right. The friends you have, they will form you as you go through life, and make some good friends, keep them for the rest of your life, but have them be people that you admire as well as like them.
As a general matter, as a one piece of specific financial advice, I would say, avoid credit cards. Just forget about them. We're in various businesses that issue credit cards. The American public loves credit cards. But if you start revolving debt on credit cards, you're going to be paying 18 or 20%. And you can't make progress in your financial life going around borrowing money at 18 or 20%. You can make a lot of money by lending it out at 18 or 20% over time. If you can find anybody that's good that will borrow from you. But you don't want to be on the side of the equation that's always behind in life. I was lucky. I'd saved about $10,000 by the time I got out of school. That $10,000 was really worth millions I might have earned later on, because after you get a family and everything, the expenses roll in. But those were my tools to work with, but it was only because I was ahead of the game. If you're behind the game by $10,000 at some point and paying 18 or 20% interest on it, you'll never get out of it. So the trick, I've got a partner that says, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. And that's true in financial matters as well. You want to figure out where you don't want to be ahead of time and avoid that. And I get about a dozen letters a day from people who are having terrible problems. And there are two reasons why they have terrible problems. One is a number of them have had health problems of some sort. I mean, they have really been hit by or somebody in their family has been hit by some kind of catastrophic illness, and that is it's a terrible thing to happen to any family. And they run up bills they can't pay, and really only society can solve that one in terms of protecting people against that. That's just plain bad luck. But the other one is from people who run up credit card debt, and they're facing bankruptcy, or they've been through bankruptcy once before, and they owe a whole bunch of money, and they can't even pay the interest, let alone pay any principal. And half of my letters come from people like that, and that problem is avoidable. Catastrophic illness is not, but credit card debt is something you bring on yourself, and it's way easier to stay out of trouble than to get out of trouble financially. And I will guarantee you, if you run up big credit card debt, you will be in trouble probably the rest of your life in terms of your financial situation. On the other hand, if you get ahead of the game, even it's on a very modest scale, so that money is coming in from investing, and people owe you money, or equities owe you ownership, you'll be way ahead of the game compared to paying it, paying your creditors every month. So my advice to you is, if you can't pay for it, don't buy it.
I have constructed a business that fits me. It's kind of crazy to spend your life painting if you're painting a subject you don't want to look at. I've gotten to paint my own painting in business on an unlimited canvas, in a way. It's a different sort of place. I work with a great group of people that make my life very easy and that take good care of me. We have 25 people in the office, and if you go back, it's the exact same 25, the exact same ones. We don't have any committees at Berkshire. We don't have a public relations department. We don't have investor relations. We don't have a general counsel. We don't have a human relations department. We just don't go for anything that people do just as a matter of form. It's exactly the life I like. And it's not work to me. It's just a form of play, basically.
You both have several managers working under you, so I was wondering, what are some steps that a new entrant into the job market can take to accelerate their journey towards an upper level management position?
Yeah, well, one thing I will tell you that I didn't realize when I was getting out of school is how much the unusual person will jump out at you. I mean, and it isn't because they got 200 IQs or anything like that. It's really because of just how they behave, what they bring, the energy they bring, the commitment they bring, the quality of how they do things, how they treat the people around them, all kinds of things. But you will jump out much more than you might anticipate. One of the things you would want to be sure to do is, whether you like it or not, get very comfortable, it may take a while, with public speaking, for example. I mean, that's an asset that will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a liability if you don't like doing it and are uncomfortable doing it. That also will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a necessary skill. But a lot of the skills are just human skills. If you get the best out of people around you,
That's a rare talent, and it doesn't correlate with IQ. It correlates with an attitude and toward the world and toward other people. And it's a talent that if you work at early and you're really conscious about it, you don't have to show up other people. You don't have to be smarter than they are or anything else. You want to bring out the best in them. It will pay huge dividends.
Now I've got some special bonus clips that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the Billionaire Mindset question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video and your plan of action for the next week? Also, if you've already got your Billionaire Mindset companion PDF calendar, get ready for another amazing video tomorrow. Or if you don't have it yet, you can get it for free in the first line of the description below. And if you're enjoying this Billionaire Mindset series, give me a hashtag Billionaire Mindset in the comments below so I can celebrate you.
How do you deal with failure? And what's your advice to young entrepreneurs like me in this case, especially with regards to failure and how to approach it?
Yeah, well, if you fail, you really do dust yourself off and get right back in. I mean, you're going to fail at some things. You're going to have some human relationships that don't work out. Fairly significant number of people get divorced. I mean, that's a very big decision to have turn out badly. But I think if you study almost everybody and read Kay's book, Personal History, and everybody fails at some things. I mean, particularly when you're younger. I mean, you do have less experience in evaluating humans and just knowing about whatever it may be businesses. But it is not fatal. I mean, if you're healthy and you live in this, particularly living in this country, there's going to be an opportunity that comes along. I got turned down for the Harvard Business School when I got out of the University of Nebraska. And I remember, I went to Chicago to get interviewed. This is when you traveled on the train, and so I spent 10 hours going there. And this fellow looked at me, and about 10 minutes he said, "Forget it, Bell." And now I got to go back on the train 10 hours and think, what am I going to tell my dad? What am I going to tell my dad? I mean, my dad always told me I could do anything, and everything. Now I've just gotten turned down, But it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me, because then I went to Columbia where Ben Graham was. In fact, it probably even affected who I married, because I took a 1-year course at Columbia instead of 2 years at Harvard, and she might have found some other guy during that time. So, almost everything in my life that looked like a failure has either usually it's turned into a success. I mean, the world isn't over. If you have bad luck in health, that's tough. I mean, there's just no getting away. I've been lucky on that. But the other kind of things, if you're healthy and you're bright and you've got decades ahead of you, if something goes wrong, if you find yourself working for the wrong employer and they're doing things you don't approve of, or they're not treating you fairly, the world isn't over yet. You just go out and find somebody else.
If you want to sign up for the entire Billionaire Mindset series for free and get the companion bonus PDF calendar, check the link right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.